A 2-week lockdown has been imposed in Sydney to contain an outbreak of the highly contagious COVID-19 Delta variant. The new restrictions affect more than 5 million people in and around the Australian city. At least 80 cases have been reported so far. Most have been linked to a limousine driver who was infected while taking an international flight crew to a quarantine hotel. The country remains largely unvaccinated. Here's what the State Premier had to say during the lockdown announcement.
A few days ago I said this was the scariest time that I felt since the pandemic started, and that's proven to be the case. We should brace ourselves for more cases. We're finding that all household contacts unfortunately are getting the virus. Transmissibility is at least double what previous variants have been. So we do need to brace ourselves for potentially larger number of cases in the following days, and that's why it's so important we take action now.
Well, let's get the latest from Sydney with journalist Roger Maynard. Roger, a lockdown for millions because of some 80 new virus cases. I mean, for those of us living in Europe or elsewhere, that seems rather strict. Why are the authorities taking this strict action?
Yeah, the figures are quite low by global standards, but they were enough to scare the New South Wales government into serious action and declaring a total lockdown of Sydney from today and for the next 2 weeks. Sydneysiders are being urged to stay at home unless they need to go out for shopping or have essential work to attend to, which they can't do at home, or need a bit of exercise. Shops can stay open, but cafes are only being allowed to serve takeaways. The weddings will be allowed tomorrow, but after then, no more weddings for at least a fortnight. And as for funerals, well, they can continue as long as no more than 100 mourners are attending. But generally speaking, it's a pretty serious development here and reflects the serious nature or the serious view that the government are taking of the situation.
Now, it's largely the Delta variant that seems to be present there. Is that correct? Why are authorities so worried about the Delta variant?
Well, the state government have taken, what's really a fairly draconian action because they fear there's every chance of the Delta strain of the virus spreading uncontrollably around the city. The New South Wales Health Minister said today that this variant is already moving around the community far faster than anyone could have imagined, and there are very real fears that more cases, many more cases, could emerge in the coming days. So it seems that Sydneysiders are getting the message pretty quickly. Today, roads were practically deserted of traffic. The pedestrians were more or less absent completely from the city centre. And, Australia, it has to be said, has been fairly fortunate since this pandemic began, partly because it's an island at the far end of the world, but also because the government closed the international border last March, and all returning Australian citizens had to undergo 2 weeks mandatory quarantine in a hotel. So Australia's escaped the full brunt of the pandemic, but risks or worries about it starting now.
What about vaccinations, Roger? I mean, the vaccination rollout got off to a slow start. How are vaccinations coming along now?
Yeah, well, the vaccination rollout is still pretty slow, it has to be said, but the latest figures are about only 5% of the population have had only one jab, and that's partly because of the shortage of supplies. The government didn't order enough to begin with, and then there's vaccine hesitancy. A lot of the vaccinations at the moment are AstraZeneca. People worried about blood clots associated with the AstraZeneca virus, and as a result of that, a lot of people are deciding that they won't take the jab now. They'll wait till supplies of Pfizer arrive in greater quantity and have the jab then. So there's a lot of vaccine hesitancy, and that's one reason why the vaccination rollout hasn't happened as quickly as it might have done. Meanwhile, the economic cost of this 2-week lockdown is expected to be at least $2 billion, and if the outbreak continues, then the lockdown could be extended well beyond that.
All right, Roger, thank you very much. Roger Maynard, journalist in Sydney.